Hey there, TaxBots. I'm Justin Spicer with Legal Aid of Southeast and Central Ohio, and I'm here with Kathy Hoover and Luke Menek, attorneys with our Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. Today, we're going to be talking about new changes to the Form 1099-K, an important IRS form for many who are self-employed, and we're going to dispel some common myths about that form as well. Feel free to leave a comment or a question, and we'll answer whatever we can. Luke, before we get started with today's session, could you tell us about Form 1099-K, what it's for, and why it's important?
So definitely. So if you're self-employed, you own a business, or even if you sell personal items and accept payments through payment apps like Cash App or Venmo, or online third-party companies like Etsy, eBay, PayPal, and so on, you need to report that as income for tax purposes. The Form 1099-K is the form that will report that income.
So, Kathy, many of our viewers may have heard about changes to this form in the news lately. Can you give us an update on what changed?
First, let's talk about what hasn't changed. So, income received through payment apps or third parties need to report as income. That has always been the rule. It does not matter if you make $1 selling items or $1,000 selling items. What has changed is when the Form 1099-K will be sent to the taxpayer. Form 1099-K is just a form self-employed folks use to report their income to the IRS. Before a recent law went into effect, you had to have gross payments of more than $20,000 and more than 200 transactions before a 1099-K would be sent to you. Now, if you have gross payments over $5,000, you'll be sent a Form 1099-K. Even if you get a 1099-K, it does not automatically mean you owe income tax on the gross sales reported on that form. A common misconception is that Form 1099-K is a new tax that taxpayers will have to pay on their profits. The change is not a new tax, but a new reporting requirement for the payment organizations.
Okay. So, Luke, there's a lot of talk in the media and online about one aspect of the 1099-K I'm hoping you can clear up for us. Is it true or false that people will get a Form 1099-K if they receive personal payments from friends and family?
That is false. That is a myth. So payments from friends and family should generally not be reported on a Form 1099-K. The form is only meant to report payments for goods or services and should not report personal payments like rent, dinner, travel, and other gifts or reimbursements, no matter the amount. Generally, in payments apps, the default settings for personal payments, unless the sender indicates they're purchasing goods or services or it's a business account.
If the taxpayer doesn't get a Form 1099-K, but they earned money that should have been reported on a Form 1099-K, does that mean the income doesn't need to be reported?
No, that income does still need to be reported. This is another myth, unfortunately. As I mentioned earlier, it does not matter if you made $1 or $1,000, that money must be reported as income if it is income. So even if you don't receive a Form 1099-K, you will need to report that income to the IRS.
Luke, will a taxpayer owe taxes on the amount reported on the Form 1099-K?
So the form will provide the gross or the total amount of payments that people get per app or marketplace. And just because a payment is reported on a Form 1099-K does not mean it's taxable. For example, the Form 1099-K may include amounts for fees, credits, refunds, shipping, and other discounts. These items are not taxable. You can deduct them from the gross amount. And good record keeping is important to be able to prove the income and deductible expenses you report under tax return.
Luke, can you give us an example of how a taxpayer would report a personal item that was sold for a profit?
Sure. So let's look at our example here. So we have a taxpayer that owns a car. Now, the taxpayer bought the car for $4,000. The taxpayer sells the car to Sue for $8,000. Sue sends the money to taxpayer through Venmo. So in this case, the taxpayer's gain will be the amount that they sold the car for, which in this case was $8,000, minus the amount they paid, which is $4,000. So they would have $4,000 of gain in this situation. They will not receive a Form 1099-K because the amount is less than $5,000. So Venmo will not send them a 1099-K. but the gain of $4,000 is still taxable for the income or taxable income for the taxpayer. And the taxpayer will need to figure and report the gain on both their Form 8949, the sales and other dispositions of capital assets, as well as the Schedule D, which will be included with their Form 1040, and that's to report their capital gains and losses.
So Kathy, what happens if the taxpayer receives a 1099 Form K, or excuse me, a Form 1099K, but they have been sharing access to their payment apps with someone else?
So if you've been sharing access with your payment apps with somebody else, to show how this works, we're going to talk about Tammy Taxpayer. Tammy Taxpayer owns Tammy's Coffee Shop. Tammy accepts payments through Cash App and Venmo. Bob decides to open Bob's Bagel Bistro inside Tammy's Coffee Shop, and they agree to share Tammy's Cash App and Venmo accounts. At the end of the year, Tammy would get a 1099K that reports all those payments. When Tammy receives the 1090K for all the payments, Bob's share would be $2,000 of the total gross payments of $3,000. Tammy would need to provide to Bob a 1099K for his share of the payments. Bob would then need to report the $2,000 for his business on Schedule C, the tax form you use to report your business income and expenses.
So then what happens if the taxpayer bought or sold a business during the year or changed how the business is structured during the year?
So if you bought or sold a business during the year, your Form 1099K may include payments for transactions made before you bought or after you sold that business. This can happen when the tax identification number and business name associated with the payment app is not updated with the new owner's information. You should then request a corrected Form 1099K from the person who sent it to you. Also, keep a copy of that Form 1099K and the corrected 1099K to keep the purchase and sales agreement that showed when you purchased that business so that you can prove on later what date the transaction should have been split if necessary. Using the example before, let's say Tammy sells that coffee shop to Bob in March of 2023, but they forgot to update the business information from the old owner to the new owner in the payment app. When Tammy receives the 1099K from Square in January of 2024, she needs to figure out what amount on that 1099K is her portion and what portion is Bob's. Tammy should also corrected Form 1099K from Square that only shows her transactions from January to March. Similarly, if you change your business structure during the year, like forming a limited liability corporation, and continue using the same payment app, the amount shown in the Form 1099K will not correspond correctly between the two entities. Be sure you keep records that show the correct income and deductions for both so that you can split those later.
So Luke, what should the taxpayer do if they get a Form 1099K but it's wrong?
So if you receive a Form 1099K, but it is wrong, you should request a corrected form from the issuer, meaning the person who sent it to you. On the top left corner of the Form 1099K, it says Filer, and that is the name and contact of the issuer. If you don't recognize the issuer, contact the settlement entity, PSE, that's listed on the bottom left corner of the form above your account number.
Kathy, where can people find more information if they have questions?
Yeah, so you can visit irs.gov/1099K help. That's irs.gov/1099K HELP if you have any additional questions about this form.
All right, great. Thank you, Kathy and Luke, for the great information as always. And thanks to everyone for tuning in today. As a reminder, this segment and all the others in our tax chat series, including our self-employment sessions, are available on our Facebook page and our YouTube page. We'll be back next Friday, December 13th, for our first Facebook Live in Spanish. So we hope to see you then. Take it easy. Have a good one.